edition of the Spyder's Web live from the Bucs room. Thank you very much for joining us on YouTube and Facebook. And yes, I told you we would return to the Bucs room. I hope you enjoyed the broadcast from the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Hope to do a little bit more here in the next couple weeks. But right now, what I'm going to try to focus on is the start of football. Don't let anybody fool you here, guys. The football season officially starts tomorrow with free agency at 4 o'clock. Let's talk about what the Buccaneers are going to do. Give you a preview of some of the players I think they may pick up, and I'll tell you what they should do. And let's talk about Ronde Barber. Again, thank you very much for tuning in to the Spyder's Web on YouTube and Facebook. And there was a story that came out this week about Ronde Barber wanting to come back to the Buccaneers, or the Buccaneers wanting him to come back. And I've thought about this. I think they should have him back, but they should have him back in a lesser role, and this is why. The position that Mark Barron was intended to play was what Barber played last year, and it showed. The secondary is not very good last year. In fact, they're one of the worst in the NFL. If you bring Barber back for another year, he will play that position. He was very good with that run defense because they were ranked #1. The problem is Mark Barron isn't very good in coverage. Not only that, but I think Barber, even though he played well last year, how much more does he have left in the tank, guys? 38 years old. I'm not sure what you should do with him. I think you should have him in a lesser role at this point. He's a Hall of Famer, but I think you have to look to the future. And just as I say future, Adam Schefter reports tonight from ESPN that the Buccaneers are one of the two teams, of course the Lions being involved, that are the leading suitors for Deshaun Golston. Now he's going to probably command at least $7 to $8 million a year, but that is a huge upgrade for this secondary, which again was one of the worst in the NFL last year. So I think the Buccaneers at this point have moved on. Now, what should the Buccaneers address? Well, it's very easy. I keep on talking about it. It's secondary. Who should they go after? Well, there's been a report this week that the Buccaneers are interested in Derek Cox, and it would make sense. And here's why. He's 26 years old. He's physical. He can play the press coverage like the Buccaneers want their corners to play. Not only that, but he's also familiar with the new Buccaneer defensive backs coach and Tony Oden. So that seems like a likely fit. Now, what's he going to command? At least $6 to $7 million. Now, this is where I have a problem, because I'm not sure that he really deserves $6 or $7 million. I mean, listen, if the Buccaneers are willing to give him the money, then of course he's going to take it. But he's missed 17 games the last 3 seasons. I'm not sure if you want to bring this guy on to your team if he's going to be an injury risk. So, that's one of the players the Buccaneers have supposedly been interested in. We'll see tomorrow at 4 o'clock when free agency starts if he's one of the players they sign. Now, another player that they're actually looking at is Sean Smith, and he probably is the top corner in this free agent class. He's a corner out of with the Miami Dolphins last year, a little bit inconsistent, but also can be physical, can play the run, and he could command at least $8 to $9 million a year. So now you're putting out big money on your defense, and you should, but this is one of the players the Buccaneers are going to be interested in, because they have talked to his agents on Saturday, and they have been in contact with him, and they're not the only team, so we'll see how this plays out. But right now, this is the top corner in free agency. If the Buccaneers can get him and Cox, that would be a huge upgrade for this secondary. A guy that I would like them to see go get would be Brent Grimes. He's 29 years old. He's coming off an injury, but you double dip a little bit. And what that means basically is you take away from a rival, you make them weaker, and you improve your secondary at the same time. Remember, a couple years ago, Grimes really messed with Josh Freeman. He had an interception in that Bucs game in Tampa. He's a very good corner. He's going to cost a little bit less because he's coming off an injury. It is a risky proposition, but there's more there for Grimes. I think he's more of a proven commodity, if you will, than Cox is. So, those are some of the guys I'm looking at. You got Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie, another guy the Buccaneers may be looking at. But right now, these guys, to me, are the creme of the creme. Derek Cox, I'm not so sure, but I think the Buccaneers are going to be interested in him because he is familiar with the new defensive backs coach. I would like to see Sean Smith and Brent Grimes. Now, the other area of interest for the Buccaneers, I think, is the defensive line. And this has become a very big issue at this point. Michael Bennett, who is coming off a year where he had 9.5 sacks, 27 years old, a very good and consistent defensive end, probably your best defensive end on this team, who can play the run, is out there in free agency. And he could sign with the Tennessee Titans or the New York Giants. And this is why I say the Titans or the Giants. First of all, the Titans, they want to go pay big dollar for defensive end. Cliff Averill, Dwight Freeney, John Abraham are some of the names to come to mind. But the top free agent for defensive ends in this market is Michael Bennett. So it makes sense. Not only that, but there has been talk about Bennett's brother, Martellus Bennett, joining him to play. Well, consequently, the Titans need a tight end because Jared Cook is a free agent. So that would make sense. The Giants would also make sense because why would Martellus want to leave the Giants? He had one of his most productive years with New York last year in Eli Manning. So maybe the Giants can be a suitor and persuade, if you will, Michael Bennett to come there because their pass rush wasn't very good last year. You add a Michael Bennett to the mix, it makes them better. So I feel like the Buccaneers should sign Michael Bennett not only because he is your most consistent defensive end, but he's also very good against the run. And you're talking about a defense last year, ladies and gentlemen, that again had 27 sacks. That's not going to get it done. You have to add more talent. And I get the philosophy with Mark Dominic and this organization. They invested highly in Adrian Claiborne with the #1 pick, but he's coming off an ugly knee injury last year. You invested highly into Quan Bowers, but he has some legal trouble. That hasn't been sorted out yet. But not only that, he's also coming off some injuries. So why would you deplete or get rid of one of your defensive ends that's your most consistent? Doesn't make sense to me, and that's why I think it's a bluff. I think Michael Bennett will give the Buccaneers an opportunity to try to sign him and match an offer. Now the question is, does Mark Dominic do it? Well, I hope he does, because right now I'm looking at the guys that the Buccaneers could be interested in, and there was a report this week that they're interested in John Abraham. Now the only problem with that is Abraham is a little bit up there in age. Okay? He had 10 sacks last year, but the guy cannot stay injury-free. So do you really want to risk the fact of having 2 defensive ends on your line, or 3 defensive ends for that matter, that are all injured? I'm not sure about that. Dwight Freeney had one of his worst years last year. He's up there in age. Had 4.5 sacks. I'll give him a mulligan on this because he played in the 3-4 defense. But is he really going to give you the sacks that you need for this team? I'm not sure about that. I would say more than likely 15 to 20 plays a game. So you tell me what you think. What do the Buccaneers should do? What should they do in free agency? Should they go after these cornerbacks? Should they pursue Deshaun Golston? What about the defensive end position? Should they re-sign Michael Bennett? Is John Abraham the answer? Is Dwight Freeney the answer? Are you going to pay big money for Cliff Averill? I don't think so. This is what I think the Buccaneers should do. What they should do is figure out what they're going to do with Ronde Barber. And obviously, they want him to come back. I'm not so sure if Ronde Barber wants to come back. I'm not sure if he wants to come back in a lesser role. But if the Buccaneers are going to sign Deshaun Golston, then for me at this point, I think Ronde Barber will probably either have to accept a lesser role or have to retire. I think the Buccaneers have moved on, and I think it's a good move on their part. Now, I think they should sign Sean Smith, okay? I think this is a guy that is the top cornerback in the free agent market. He's a little bit inconsistent, but if you want to upgrade your secondary, you have to go big. You went big last year by signing Vincent Jackson. You have to go big this year. You have $30 million in cap space. You got to spend it somehow. Now, I would like them to get Brent Grimes because, again, you double dip, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen. So I'll go with this Derek Cox theory. He's a potential starting corner for this team, 26 years old. He had 4 interceptions last year in 12 games. Let's see what he has overall. And then the big move that I would make is re-sign Michael Bennett, so in turn, he can recruit his brother, Martellus Bennett, and then you kill 2 birds with 1 stone by getting both Bennett brothers in the fold. One is your most consistent defensive end, and the other as a tight end target for Josh Freeman, because you're going to have to get this guy some weapons. And you notice that I didn't really talk about the offense. I think the Buccaneers are going to address this offensive situation, but they may do it through the draft, because I think this receiving core, the receivers in this draft, the depth here is very plentiful, and I think there are plenty of receivers in this draft coming up to help this team out. So tell me what you think. Tell me what you think about this free agency. What are the Buccaneers going to do? Are you excited about the prospect of the Buccaneers improving their defense? Give me your thoughts. Again, this has been the Spyder's Web live from the Bucs Room on Facebook and YouTube. Tune in. I got another show here coming up, and it's going to be around the NFL. We're going to try to get away from the Buccaneers. I know this is a Buccaneers show, but we're going to try to do some other teams. Stay tuned to that. Same Spyder time, same Spyder channel.